If you were challenged to marry for money, would you accept? Nathan Caldwell always won. In business, no power, no control. But this time, he may have bet too big. He has accepted a dangerous challenge, and the woman he chose to play this game may be the only one capable of taking him down. Because Olivia Carter isn't here to play. She has a plan. And what started as a bet soon turns into a duel where the real prize could be the heart of whoever loses first. But will anyone really win this story? Because Olivia Carter isn't here to play. She has a plan. And what started as a bet soon turns into a duel where the real prize might be the heart of the first one to fall. But can anyone really come out as the winner in this story? I'm going to tell you exactly how it all happened. But first, make sure to leave a like to support the channel, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any twists. Now let's get to the story. The luxury bar in the heart of Manhattan was packed with executives, models, and financial magnates. The sound of laughter, mixed with the clinking of glasses, filled the air. But nothing there seemed to impress Nathan Caldwell, the billionaire investment mogul and one of Wall Street's most influential men. He gazed at the city through the massive panoramic window, holding a glass of Scotch whiskey, bored with yet another predictable night. That was when Ryan Bennett, his best friend and business rival, approached with a sharp smile. "You always win, don't you, Nate? In everything." Nathan didn't need to respond. They both knew it was a fact. Ryan swirled the glass in his hand before issuing a challenge. "But what if I give you something you can't win?" Nathan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "If I'm interested, say it already." Ryan leaned in, his voice dripping with provocation. "A woman who can't be bought, controlled, or manipulated. A woman who doesn't need you." Nathan laughed in disbelief. "They all say that until they see my bank account." Ryan shook his head, as if he had expected that response. "What if I bet 50 million that this time you won't succeed?" Nathan's gaze turned serious. He never turned down a challenge. "Who is she?" Ryan unlocked his phone and showed a photo. Olivia Carter, investigative journalist, known for exposing the dirty secrets of New York's biggest businessman. Nathan studied the image of the woman who was supposedly impossible to conquer. Chestnut hair tied up carelessly, a serious expression, intense and determined eyes. She didn't have the conventional beauty of the models surrounding him, but there was something about her that held his attention. "What are the rules?" Ryan grinned. "You have to marry her. If you can keep her by your side for 6 months, I'll pay you 50 million. But if she leaves you before that, you owe me." Nathan looked at the photo again. 6 months. He had closed deals far more difficult than that. "Deal!" Ryan raised his glass in a toast. "Good luck. You're going to need it." The next morning, Nathan already had all the information he needed. Olivia Carter was more than a journalist. She was a force of nature, determined to expose corrupt businessmen and destroy empires built on exploitation. She hated men like him, which only made it more interesting. Nathan sent an assistant to reach out, but as expected, Olivia declined any invitation, so he decided to do it the hard way. He showed up unannounced at the newsroom where she worked, a discreet building on a busy Brooklyn street. He walked in with his commanding presence, dressed in an impeccable suit, and all eyes turned to him. Olivia didn't seem impressed. She was seated at her desk, typing rapidly on her laptop, and only looked up when he approached. "Mr. Caldwell," her tone was dry, with not a hint of interest. "To what do I owe the honor?" Nathan smiled, pulling out a chair and sitting down uninvited. "I want to have dinner with you." Olivia crossed her arms, analyzing him. "Why, you're used to buying everything you want and think you can buy me too." Nathan chuckled. "I prefer to call it persuasion." Olivia held his gaze. "And if I say no?" Nathan leaned in slightly. "Then I'll come back tomorrow. And the day after. Until you say yes." She sighed, clearly irritated. "Fine, one dinner, but understand something, Nathan. I'm not for sale." He just smiled. She didn't know it yet, but she was already in the game. On the night of the dinner, Nathan reserved one of New York's most exclusive restaurants. But when Olivia arrived, she didn't seem the least bit impressed by the luxurious setting or the private table with a panoramic view. She sat down and picked up the menu without looking at him. "Let's skip the act. What do you really want?" Nathan hid his amusement. He liked a challenge, a chance to get to know you. Olivia let out a sarcastic laugh. "Nathan Caldwell wants to get to know me, or do you just want to figure out why I'm not falling for your game?" He studied her for a long moment. No woman had ever confronted him like this. "Maybe a little of both." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "Well, here's some truth for you. I don't like you, or what you represent, and I only accepted this dinner because I want to understand what you want from me." Nathan remained calm, but this conversation was slipping out of his control, something that rarely happened. "And what if I told you I want you to, marry me?" The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia blinked a few times before letting out a disbelieving laugh. "This has to be a joke." Nathan stayed serious. "I never joke about important things." Olivia leaned back in her chair, trying to decipher him. "Why would I agree to that?" He shrugged. "Because I can offer you something you want." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "And what would that be?" Nathan pulled a golden card from his pocket and slid it across the table. "Unlimited access to any information you want on New York's biggest businessmen, including the ones you're trying to take down." Olivia's eyes flickered with interest for a second before returning to their skeptical edge. "Why would I believe you?" Nathan smiled. "Because I never lose." Olivia picked up the card, spinning it between her fingers, thoughtful. Then finally she spoke. 6 months. Not a day more. Nathan felt adrenaline rush through his veins. 6 months. They shook hands. The game was officially on. But what Nathan didn't know was that Olivia had a plan of her own. She had been investigating Caldwell Industries for months. Marrying Nathan was more than just a game. It was the perfect opportunity to destroy him from the inside. While Nathan thought he was in control, Olivia was already preparing checkmate. The wedding happened quickly, without grand celebrations or spotlights. Just a signed contract, a few photos for proof, and the certificate validated. Olivia didn't want any fuss, and to her surprise, Nathan didn't care. The important thing was that she was now inside his life, under his rules, in his territory. Nathan's Manhattan penthouse became Olivia's new home, but it didn't take long for him to realize that living with her would be far more complicated than he had imagined. She showed no interest in the luxury around her, didn't bother attending the social events he organized, and, worst of all, carried on with her routine as if the marriage was nothing more than an insignificant detail. While Nathan was used to women orbiting around him, Olivia behaved as if he were nothing more than a minor inconvenience in her life. The first morning was a shock for Nathan. He went down to the kitchen, expecting to find her still asleep in the guest room, but there she was, sitting at the counter, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee from an ordinary mug, nothing like the expensive porcelain he imported from France. "You're an early riser," he remarked, pouring himself a cup. Olivia didn't even glance up from the pages. "I have work." Nathan leaned against the counter, watching her. "You don't have to work anymore." Olivia finally lifted her gaze. "I'm not your employee, Nathan." He gave a lopsided smile. "You're my wife." Olivia placed her cup down with a faint clink. "And that means nothing beyond a contract." Nathan found her response amusing. He knew this wouldn't be easy, but there was something about her resistance that made the game even more interesting. Throughout the week, Nathan tried different approaches. He had designer clothes, jewelry, even a brand new car delivered to her. Olivia rejected everything. "This doesn't impress me," she said, handing back the car keys without even glancing at the model. Nathan was starting to realize he would need a different strategy. By the end of the week, a gala event was taking place at the plaza. Nathan expected Olivia to refuse the invitation, but to his surprise, she accepted. When she descended the stairs to meet him, he had to admit to himself that he had never seen her like this. The simple yet elegant black dress subtly accentuated her curves. Her hair, styled in a low bun, highlighted the delicate features of her face. But it was her expression that caught his attention, confident, cold, calculated, as if she were preparing to face an enemy rather than attend a social event. In the car, on the way to the event, Nathan broke the silence. "You finally decided to act like my wife?" Olivia kept her eyes on the window. "I'm acting like someone who knows what they want." Nathan frowned, intrigued, but chose not to push further. The event was packed with investors, businessmen, and familiar faces from high society. Nathan guided Olivia through the room, introducing her to influential people, but he soon realized she didn't need his help. Olivia knew how to carry herself, how to engage in conversation, and, most interestingly, how to intimidate. While some magnates' wives smiled submissively, Olivia discussed politics, economics, and the impacts of big corporations. Nathan watched her with a mix of pride and caution. She was far too comfortable in this environment. That's when he saw her talking to Victor Langley, CEO of one of the largest media networks in the US, and one of the men he hated most. Nathan approached, forcing a smile. "Victor, I didn't know you." And Olivia were acquainted. Victor smirked with irony. "We just met, but I've heard a lot about her." Nathan looked at Olivia, who held his gaze without hesitation. Something was happening here. When Victor walked away, Nathan grabbed Olivia's arm. "What are you doing?" Olivia gave him an almost defiant smile. "Talking." Nathan pulled her into a more private corner. "Don't play games with me." Olivia leaned in slightly, her voice a whisper. "Maybe you're not the only one who knows how to play." That night, Nathan realized his wife wasn't just a difficult adversary. She was a real problem. He began watching her more closely over the next few days. Olivia left every morning, but never said exactly where she was going. She took phone calls in another room, always maintaining a closed-off posture. Nathan knew there was something behind all of this, but he couldn't figure out what. In the third week of marriage, Olivia made a mistake. Nathan came home earlier than usual and found the office door slightly ajar. He never left it open. When he walked in, he saw Olivia in front of his computer, the screen reflecting confidential files from Caldwell Industries. For a moment, they just stared at each other without saying a word. Then Olivia calmly closed the laptop. "You're home early." Nathan slowly walked toward her, his gaze locked onto hers. "What are you doing in my office?" Olivia crossed her arms. "Exactly what you think I'm doing." The silence was heavy. Nathan felt something he hadn't felt in years, real danger. Olivia wasn't just a difficult woman. She was here for a reason, and now he needed to find out what it was. Nathan kept his eyes locked on Olivia, every muscle in his body tense. Never in his life had he been caught off guard like this. He had always had absolute control over every situation, but now here, in his own office, he was seeing something that shouldn't be happening. Olivia didn't seem the least bit worried about being caught digging through his confidential files. On the contrary, her expression was calm, almost defiant, as if she had been expecting this moment. Nathan took a step forward, his voice low and controlled. "You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" Olivia crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Yes." No excuses, no attempt to lie. Nathan moved even closer, his presence dominating the space. "And you think you can just mess with my business and walk away unscathed?" Olivia lifted her chin. "If you really thought I was just a decorative wife, you never would have chosen me for this game." Her audacity made Nathan's blood boil, but at the same time, he felt a spark of admiration. Olivia wasn't an ordinary woman. She wasn't afraid of him, and that bothered him more than it should. He placed his hands on the desk, bringing his face closer to hers. "You have no idea what you just got yourself into." Olivia held his gaze steady. "I know exactly where I am." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Nathan needed to think fast. If Olivia was digging through his files, she had a goal. She wasn't just some scammer. She didn't want money. She wanted something much more dangerous. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark living room, his untouched whiskey glass on the table beside him. He went over every detail of their marriage, how Olivia had accepted without hesitation, how she never reacted to his attempts at provocation, how she refused to engage in the luxurious world he belonged to. It all made sense now. She had a plan from the very beginning. But what was it? He picked up his phone and made a call. "I need you to investigate Olivia Carter. Every detail, every move, every contact. I need to know what she wants before she gets it." The next morning, Olivia acted as if nothing had happened. She came down to the kitchen, poured herself a cup of coffee, and flipped through the newspaper like she did every morning. Nathan watched her from across the counter. This woman was an enigma. He decided to test her. "We have an event tonight. You're coming with me." Olivia lifted her eyes to him. "And if I say no?" Nathan smirked. "That's not part of the contract." Olivia held his gaze for a moment before taking a sip of her coffee. "Fine, but it better be interesting." Nathan let out a quiet chuckle. She played well. That night's event was a gala hosted by Caldwell Industries investors. The biggest names on Wall Street would be there, which meant Olivia would have access to valuable information. Nathan knew this and wanted to see how she would handle it. When she came down the stairs ready to leave, he couldn't deny he was impressed. Olivia never dressed to impress, yet it was impossible to ignore her. The deep red satin dress hugged her silhouette without being excessive. Her hair, loose in soft waves, softened her features, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. Calculating, observant, she was there with a purpose. The ballroom was packed with magnates and politicians. Nathan kept Olivia at his side while greeting investors and shareholders, but every time he glanced away, he noticed Olivia making her own connections. She wasn't a passive companion. She absorbed information, analyzed who was useful and who could be an obstacle. When Nathan spotted her talking to Philip Monroe, the owner of one of the country's most influential investigative newspapers, he knew he had to intervene. He approached and placed his hand possessively on Olivia's waist. "I hope my wife isn't bothering you, Philip." Philip smirked with irony. "On the contrary, she has a sharp mind." Olivia looked at Nathan with provocation. "We were discussing integrity in the corporate world." Nathan tightened his grip slightly on her waist. She was playing with him, and he knew it. That night, on the drive home, the silence between them was thick. Nathan clenched his jaw as he drove, while Olivia gazed at the city lights through the window. "You know you're walking into dangerous territory, don't you?" Nathan finally broke the silence. Olivia gave a faint smile. "Funny, I was about to say the exact same thing to you." For the first time, Nathan realized he wasn't sure who was in control of this game. Nathan Caldwell had always known how to play the game. Since his early years in business, he had learned that power wasn't just about money. It was about control. Controlling information, controlling emotions, controlling the people around him. But Olivia Carter was a different kind of challenge. She didn't yield. She didn't bend under his presence like so many others, and now, after that night, he was certain she was moving against him. The problem? He still didn't know exactly how. That morning, Nathan was already awake before Olivia came downstairs. He pretended to read through some reports. While watching her prepare her coffee, every movement she made was measured, precise. When she sat at the table, he decided to provoke her. "Did you enjoy the party?" Olivia lifted her gaze with a half-smile. "It was, enlightening." Nathan set his coffee cup down and crossed his arms. "Philip Monroe is an interesting man to have a conversation with." Olivia didn't flinch. "And why does that bother you?" Nathan smirked. "Because I know your type, Olivia. You don't take a step without a purpose." She tilted her head slightly. "And you, Nathan, don't make an accusation without certainty. So tell me, what exactly are you afraid of?" Nathan held her gaze for a few seconds. She knew he was trying to unnerve her. And worse, she seemed to enjoy it. But Nathan had his own cards to play. He had spent the night going over Olivia's moves. His team had discovered that over the past few months, Olivia had been investigating companies tied to Caldwell Industries. One name kept appearing: Richard Carter. A name that at first glance meant nothing. But Nathan knew better than to believe in coincidences. He needed to find out more before making his next move. That evening, Nathan decided to test Olivia again. "Let's go out to dinner." She arched an eyebrow. "Since when do you care about casual dinners?" He chuckled. "Since my wife likes to act as if she's independent. I want you to come with me." Olivia studied him for a moment before finally agreeing. They went to Augustine, an exclusive French restaurant where Nathan was accustomed to being treated like royalty. The maitre d' led them to a private table, away from prying eyes. Olivia glanced around with disinterest. "Do you really think you can win me over with expensive dinners?" Nathan leaned in slightly, smirking. I don't. I can win you over, but I do think I can annoy you." Olivia let out a short laugh. "At least you admit it." Dinner went on without major provocations until Olivia, in what seemed like a casual moment, asked, "Nathan, have you ever destroyed something and not even realized it?" He frowned. "What are you trying to say?" Olivia spun her wineglass between her fingers. "I'm asking if, in your entire career, you've ever crushed someone without even noticing." Nathan gave a cold smile. "Business is business, Olivia. If I stopped to worry about every piece on the board, I wouldn't be where I am. Today," Olivia simply nodded. "That's exactly what worries me." Nathan felt a slight chill run down his spine. At the end of the night, as they left the restaurant, Nathan made a point to place his hand on Olivia's waist, ensuring that everyone around saw that she was his. But instead of pulling away, she leaned in closer and whispered in his ear, "Maybe you forgot to count the players in this game." Then she stepped into the car before he could respond. Nathan felt something he hadn't in years. Someone was playing against him, and for the first time he wasn't sure if he was winning. Nathan Caldwell didn't like feeling one step behind. His entire life he had built his empire on the fact that he always knew more than everyone else. He always saw further. He always anticipated moves before they were even made. But Olivia Carter was changing that. She was an enigma he hadn't yet managed to decipher, and that was a new feeling. The morning after their dinner, Nathan didn't go to work as usual. Instead, he stayed in the apartment watching Olivia. He wanted to understand her patterns, her habits, any detail that might give him a clue about what she was hiding. He knew she left every morning but never mentioned where she was going. He knew she always took her calls in another room and rarely left traces of her investigations. But what exactly was she looking for? As they had coffee, Nathan decided to test her limits. "You never talk about your family." Olivia didn't lift her eyes from the newspaper. "Because there's nothing to talk about." Nathan feigned indifference as he took a sip of coffee. "No siblings, no distant relatives?" Olivia slowly set the newspaper down and crossed her arms. "Why are you suddenly interested in my family?" Nathan studied her for a moment. She had tensed up. He smirked slightly. "I just realized I know very little about you, considering we're married." Olivia let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, and do I know so much about you?" Nathan rested his elbows on the table. "You know more than you let on." That afternoon, Nathan received a call from his investigative team. The report was ready. He opened it and started reading through the details about Olivia. It was a surface-level search, where she studied, where she worked, her most impactful articles, nothing he didn't already know. But then a name appeared again: Richard Carter. Nathan frowned. His instincts told him there was something there. He dug deeper and found a detail that made him freeze. Richard Carter had been the CEO of a company Caldwell Industries acquired years ago. He didn't remember that name, but to Olivia, it clearly meant something. He shut the laptop, his mind working rapidly. Olivia wasn't just playing a game, she was out for revenge. At the end of the day, Olivia returned home as if nothing was happening. Nathan was waiting for her in the living room. sipping whiskey. "How was your day?" he asked casually. Olivia studied him for a moment before answering. "Productive." Nathan smirked. She knew he was suspicious, but he wouldn't show his hand just yet. That night, he didn't sleep. He needed to figure out just how far Olivia was willing to go, and if she wanted war, he was more than ready to play. Nathan spent the night staring at the dark ceiling of his bedroom, processing every piece of information he had. Richard Carter. The name now pulsed in his mind like a relentless alarm. Olivia wasn't here because of a simple marriage of convenience. She wanted something from him, and he needed to find out what before she made her next move. By dawn, Nathan was in his penthouse office, combing through old contracts and past acquisition documents. He finally found the files he was looking for. Richard Carter's company had been absorbed by Caldwell Industries years ago. At the time, a ruthless negotiation had led to its downfall. Investors pulled out, the business collapsed, and Richard lost everything. And Richard Carter wasn't just another CEO, he was Olivia's father. A weight settled in Nathan's chest. This wasn't a coincidence. Olivia had entered his life with a purpose. He didn't know how, but she had orchestrated everything, from their first meeting to their marriage. She was inside his empire because she wanted to destroy it from within. When Olivia walked into the kitchen, casual as always, Nathan watched her like a declared enemy. But he couldn't act rashly. He had to be smart. He had to make her think he was still in control. He poured her a cup of coffee and handed it to her. "You slept in today." Olivia raised an eyebrow, surprised by his sudden thoughtfulness. "And you're in a good mood. Strange." Nathan gave a slight smile, but his eyes were sharp. She was playing with him, but he knew how to play too. The game of manipulation began. Nathan flipped the rules. For the next few days he pretended to be distracted, more focused on work, showing no sign of suspicion. He let Olivia lower her guard as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, he worked behind the scenes. He discreetly installed trackers on her devices, had security tail her, and gathered intel on every person she met. The surprise came quickly. Olivia was having frequent meetings with Victor Langley, the same media mogul she had spoken with at the gala. That was no small detail. Victor was one of Nathan's biggest rivals, and now he was in constant contact with his wife. Nathan felt his blood boil, but he remained cold. She didn't know he was already 2 steps ahead. That night, he invited her to dinner again. Olivia hesitated before accepting, but she went. The restaurant was sophisticated, dimly lit, perfect for conversations hiding ulterior motives. Nathan watched her as she ate, analyzing every move. "You never told me about your family," he said casually. Olivia didn't react. "Because there's nothing to tell." Nathan swirled the wine in his glass. "And your father? Was he a good man?" He noticed the slight tension in her jaw. She hadn't expected that question, but she quickly composed herself. "My father was an honest man who trusted the wrong people." Nathan smirked. "And those wrong people? Would that include me?" Olivia held his gaze, unblinking. She knew he was starting to put the pieces together, but instead of backing down, she leaned in closer and whispered, "If you're so afraid of the truth, Nathan, maybe it's because you already know the answer." Nathan gripped his glass tighter than he intended. She was playing, and he needed to decide his next move. Nathan Caldwell was not a man who rattled easily, but something about Olivia made him feel that this time he might be facing an opponent who was truly his equal. She knew the truth. Maybe she had known from the very beginning, which meant that everything about their marriage was a carefully constructed lie to place her exactly where she wanted to be, by his side, inside his world, with access to what had once been untouchable. But if she thought she could beat him, she was sorely mistaken. Nathan was ready to turn the game around. In the days following their dinner, he acted more cautiously than ever. He watched Olivia at every moment, every word she spoke, every meeting she scheduled. He needed to uncover the full extent of her plan. One night, he received confirmation of what he had already suspected. Olivia was working with Victor Langley, his biggest rival. The records showed that the two had met more than once. Nathan felt anger rise within him, but he took a deep breath. This wasn't just a marriage of convenience anymore. This was a premeditated betrayal. The next morning, as Olivia was getting ready to leave, Nathan blocked her path at the door. "Heading out? Early?" he asked casually. Olivia remained composed. "Yes, is there a problem?" Nathan crossed his arms. "That depends. Do you plan on telling me about your meetings with Victor Langley?" For the first time he saw Olivia's gaze falter for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. I have to tell you anything, Nathan. You don't own me." Nathan smiled, but his voice was cold. "No, but I am your husband, and if you're planning something against me, I suggest you think twice before moving forward." Olivia didn't back down. Instead, she stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "And what if I already know exactly what I'm doing?" Nathan's heart pounded. She wasn't bluffing. He felt the control slipping through his fingers faster than he could contain it, and he hated it. He spent the entire day digging through his own records, trying to understand what Olivia might be after. When he found the old acquisition documents from Richard Carter's company, he noticed something that had gone unnoticed for years. The deal that ruined Olivia's father wasn't just a market failure. It had been a dirty move, orchestrated by one of his own directors. At the time, Nathan hadn't paid attention. Small businesses collapsed all the time, but to Olivia, this was personal. That night, Olivia came home late. Nathan was sitting on the couch, the room dimly lit, a glass of whiskey in his hand. She paused at the entrance, as if sensing the tension in the air. "Did we have a productive day?" Nathan asked, his voice laced with irony. Olivia stepped forward. "What do you want, Nathan?" He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to tell me why you're really here." Olivia held his gaze for a long moment before giving a small smile. "You already know the answer. You just don't want to admit it." Nathan set the glass down and stood up slowly. "And what if I say the game is over?" Olivia didn't blink. "And what if I say I was never playing? Because unlike you, Nathan, I never treated this as a game." A cold sensation ran down Nathan's spine. For the first time, he was afraid of what might happen next. Nathan Caldwell had always believed he controlled everything. From the moment he signed that marriage contract, he thought Olivia Carter was just another piece in the game he always won. But now, looking into her eyes, he realized he was wrong, very wrong. She had never been playing. She had always been on a mission that was now dangerously close to being completed. The room fell into silence, the only sound being the faint clinking of ice melting in Nathan's whiskey glass. Olivia didn't look away, as firm as ever. She wasn't afraid of him, and that unsettled him more than it should. "If you never treated this as a game, then what was your plan?" he asked, his voice lower than he intended. Olivia crossed her arms, studying him as if deciding whether it was worth telling him the truth. Finally, she sighed. "My father. You destroyed him, and now I'm here to make sure you pay for it." Nathan held his breath for a moment. He already knew. He had seen it in the reports, but hearing it from her, in that calm, unwavering tone, without anger, without hesitation, made something inside him shift. He had always known his business decisions had consequences, but for the first time, he was staring at the real result of choices he made in the past. He took a step forward. "And how exactly do you plan to make me pay?" Olivia gave a small smile. "You still haven't decided if you're going to stop me, have you?" Nathan clenched his jaw. "If I wanted to stop you, I already would have." She studied him for a moment, searching for any sign of weakness. "Then let me give you a warning, Nathan." She stepped even closer, so close he could smell the soft hint of her perfume. "Either you get out of my way, or I will take you down." The air grew thick. Nathan felt adrenaline rush through his veins, but it wasn't just from anger or frustration. It was because for the first time someone was truly challenging him. Olivia was dangerous, but what unsettled him the most was that, despite everything, he still wanted to understand her. He didn't just want to beat her. He wanted to figure her out. But at that moment, he made a decision. If Olivia wanted war, he was ready to fight. The next morning, Nathan made his first move. He revoked all of her access to company information. He ordered new layers of security to be installed on the most sensitive files. If she wanted to continue her plan, she would have to work much harder. Olivia noticed immediately. When she tried to access her computer, everything was blocked. When she picked up her phone, she saw her messages with her contacts had been traced. She turned to Nathan, who was watching her from across the kitchen, calmly sipping his coffee. "Seriously?" she asked, crossing her arms. Nathan simply gave a cold smile. "If you want to play dirty, Olivia, learn from the best." But what Nathan didn't know was that Olivia had already predicted this move, and now she was ready for the next step. Olivia Carter wasn't surprised when she found her access blocked. In fact, she had been expecting it. Nathan Caldwell wasn't an amateur, and of course, he would try to shut every door before she had the chance to bring him down. But he still didn't understand the most important thing. She already had ready what she needed. She kept her expression neutral as she looked at him, sitting at the table with his coffee and that victorious smirk. He thought he was winning, but Olivia was already 2 steps ahead. "You think you can stop me?" she asked, leaning against the counter. Nathan lifted his eyes to her, savoring the moment. "I know I can. You have nothing left." Olivia let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Do you really believe that?" Nathan noticed something in the way she said those words. Confidence. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't frustration. It was certainty. He slowly set down his cup and studied her. "What did you do, Olivia?" She shrugged. "Nothing you can stop now." Nathan felt his stomach twist. He hated the feeling of being 1 step behind. Always had. But Olivia stood there, calm, as if she had already won. He stood up slowly, keeping his gaze locked on hers. "Explain." Olivia simply picked up her phone and showed him something on the screen. Nathan stepped closer, and the blood in his veins turned to ice. An open email, a dossier, internal documents, confidential reports, suspicious transactions, information no one should have. He snatched the phone from her hand as if he could somehow undo what had already been done. "How did you get this?" he growled. Olivia crossed her arms. "Did you really think blocking me now would make any difference? I had everything before you even realized it." Nathan felt his fury rising. He had never been caught off guard like this. Ever? Olivia was playing his game, and worse, she was winning. He gripped the phone tightly, his eyes burning with frustration. "If you release this, Olivia, you know what happens, don't you?" She met his gaze without a flicker of fear. "If I wanted to destroy you right now, Nathan, I could, but I won't. Not yet." The way she said it made something inside him twist. She could have ended it all, but she didn't. Why? Nathan took a deep breath, forcing himself to regain control. He placed the phone down on the table and looked at her, his blue eyes colder than ever. "What do you want?" Olivia gave him a small, knowing smile. "Now, you're starting to understand." She turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Nathan standing there, frozen with a dangerous realization. He was in her hands now, but one thing he promised himself: he was still going to turn this game around. Nathan Caldwell didn't accept defeat, ever. But now, sitting in his own home, with Olivia's dossier in front of him, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: vulnerability. Olivia hadn't just deceived him. She had been patient, waiting for the perfect moment. She played the game better than he did, and that made him even angrier. He ran his fingers over the leaked documents, each one more incriminating than the last. If Olivia wanted to, she could destroy him in seconds. But she hadn't. Why? He didn't sleep that night. He paced through the living room, analyzing every possibility. Olivia had gathered everything before he had even tried to block her. The damage was done. The only question now was what she intended to do with it. By morning, Olivia walked down the stairs as if nothing had happened. She poured herself a cup of coffee and flipped through the newspaper. Nathan watched. her from the table, arms crossed. "You could have destroyed me already. Why haven't you?" Olivia didn't lift her eyes. "Because I'm not ready yet." He clenched his fists. "What do you want from me?" She finally looked at him, her eyes burning with determination. "The truth." Nathan let out a sarcastic laugh. "The truth? What kind of emotional play is that?" Olivia set her cup down slowly. "I want you to admit what you did. I want you to look me in the eyes and say that you destroyed my father without a second thought. I want you to acknowledge that your greed cost more than just money. It cost lives." Nathan felt a tightness in his chest that he refused to acknowledge. Because she was right. He hadn't remembered Richard Carter at the time of the acquisition. To him, it had just been another contract. But now, seeing the real consequences of his actions, something inside him twisted. But he would never show it. Never. He stood up and moved toward her, planting his hands on the table, staring her down. "And if I say nothing? If I decide to end this little game of yours right now?" Olivia smirked. "You can try. But Nathan, I'm not one of your acquisitions. I'm not a piece on your chessboard. And if you want to play this game to the end, I suggest you be ready to lose." Nathan watched as she walked out of the kitchen. She was winning, and he hated admitting it. But one thing he knew for sure, he still had cards to play, and he was more than ready to use them. Nathan Caldwell never accepted losing, ever. Olivia might think she was in control, but he still had moves she hadn't anticipated, and if she wanted the truth, he would give her something even better, an illusion. Over the next few days, he changed his approach. If he had always been one step ahead, now he began to give up ground, on purpose. He let Olivia believe he was weakened, hesitant, that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to feel guilt. He lowered his resistance, stopped questioning her, even acted willing to talk about Richard Carter. But everything was calculated. One random night he left some documents on the living room table. Documents that appeared to detail illegal transactions involving Caldwell Industries, all forged. He made sure Olivia saw them. And, as expected, she took the bait. That same night, thinking Nathan was asleep, Olivia took the papers and photographed them. With her phone. She believed she was stealing something valuable, but Nathan watched everything through the security cameras he had installed in the penthouse. She was walking straight into his trap. The next morning, Nathan acted as if nothing had happened. He let Olivia leave, just as she always did. But this time, he already knew exactly where she was going. Victor Langley. Nathan picked up his phone and made a single call. "The information is planted, close in." 3 hours later, he received confirmation. Olivia had sent the documents to Victor, but what she didn't know was that those files were traceable. Her email was now compromised. Every single one of her communications was exposed, and Nathan finally had access to everything she had been planning. He returned home and waited. When Olivia walked into the apartment, he was already there, sitting on the couch, a glass of whiskey in hand. "Good afternoon," he said casually. Olivia hesitated. "You're in a good mood," Nathan smirked. "I like knowing where the pieces are on the board." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Something was different about him. Nathan stood up slowly and pulled his phone from his pocket. With a single tap, he projected onto the TV screen all the emails and messages Olivia had exchanged with Victor Langley. She froze. "Want to hear the best part?" Nathan said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "I let you think you were fooling me. I let you steal information that was never real. And now, Olivia, you're exactly where I wanted you." The silence between them was suffocating. Olivia felt her blood run cold. She had walked straight into a trap. Nathan took a step closer, his icy gaze locking onto hers. "Now tell me, dear wife, how do you plan on getting out of this one?" The silence between them was suffocating. Olivia Carter felt her blood run cold as she saw her messages projected on the screen. She had underestimated Nathan. For the first time since she entered this game, she realized she was a step behind. But unlike what he expected, she didn't back down. Nathan took another step forward, savoring his victory. You played well, Olivia, but you forgot a basic rule. Never underestimate your opponent. She crossed her arms, feigning a calm she didn't truly feel. You want me to admit I lost? Nathan smirked, triumphant. I want you to understand that you never really had a chance against me. Olivia took a deep breath. He thought he had won, but what he didn't know was that she never entered this game to play fair. Slowly, she reached for her phone, taking her time. You know what I've learned from watching you, Nathan? She asked, her voice deceptively soft. He frowned. That you're a man who doesn't handle uncertainty well. You need absolute control. You need to know exactly what's going to happen, but what if, this time, you don't? Nathan didn't like her tone. Olivia unlocked her phone and pressed a single button. An audio file began to play, his own voice. I like knowing where the pieces are on the board. His words echoed through the room, cold and calculated. Nathan felt his stomach twist. Olivia lifted her phone and showed him the screen. She had recorded the entire conversation, every word, every veiled threat. And now she had something far more powerful than the documents he had planted. She had a confession. His eyes darkened. You recorded this? Olivia shrugged. Did you really think I'd step into a game with you without a plan B? Nathan clenched his fists. He had been caught in his own game. She took a step back, her smile victorious. So tell me, Nathan, who's really trapped now? Nathan didn't answer, because for the first time he didn't have one response. Nathan Caldwell had never felt so exposed. Olivia had caught him off guard. He had spent weeks crafting the perfect plan to disarm her, destroy her investigation, and reclaim control. But now, standing in the middle of the room, listening to his own voice confessing to manipulation, he realized he was no longer the hunter. He tried to keep his expression cold, but something about the way Olivia watched him, with composure, with control, sent a chill down his spine. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice lower than he intended. Olivia spun the phone between her fingers, savoring every second of her victory. Now you're starting to understand. She walked over to the couch and sat down as if it were her throne. She was the one leading the conversation now. You thought you were in control this entire time, but Nathan, you never were. I knew you would try to stop me. I knew you'd set a trap. So while you were playing your game, I was playing mine. Nathan crossed his arms. And what exactly do you want, Olivia? Money? Power? Revenge? Olivia let out a soft laugh. If I wanted revenge, you'd already be ruined. But I want something bigger. She paused, letting the tension build. I want you to fix what you've done. Nathan blinked. That he hadn't expected. Fix it? Olivia leaned forward, her eyes sharp as blades. I want you to repair the damage you've caused, give back what you stole, clean up the messes in your company, stop destroying people like my father just to feed your ambition. Nathan let out a dry, ironic laugh. And you think I'll just comply? Olivia smiled. You will, because if you don't, this recording will end up in the right hands. And you know exactly what happens to a Wall Street mogul when the truth about his dirty deals comes out. Don't. You. Nathan didn't respond. She was right. He had built his empire by exploiting the fear of others. But now, for the first time, he was the one backed into a corner. Olivia Carter didn't want money. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted to change him. And the worst part, Nathan couldn't tell if he hated her for it, or if, deep down, he admired her for having the nerve to try. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going down without a fight. Nathan Caldwell felt adrenaline coursing through his veins. He was cornered. Olivia had the recording. She had all the evidence, and worst of all, she didn't want money. She didn't want to run. She didn't want to destroy his company. She wanted something far more dangerous. She wanted him to change. He had never been a man easily bent. He had spent his life shaping his own reality, crushing obstacles, manipulating people and situations to always come out on top. But Olivia Carter wasn't just another piece on the board. She was an opponent who played just as well as he did. Nathan took a deep breath maintaining his composure. "Let's say I agree to your terms." Olivia smiled, crossing her legs on the couch, completely at ease. "This isn't a negotiation, Nathan." He narrowed his eyes. "Do you really think I'm going to change my empire just because you're blackmailing me?" Olivia leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "I think you don't have a choice." Nathan hated to admit it, but she was right. If that audio leaked, he was finished. It wasn't just a threat to his name, it was the end of Caldwell Industries. Shareholders would abandon him. Investigations would pile up. And Nathan knew that survival in this world meant never appearing vulnerable, but he still had cards to play. That night, while Olivia slept, Nathan did something he never thought he would. He started revisiting his own past. He pulled up old documents, contracts, buried cases he hadn't looked at in years. And for the first time, he saw the trail of destruction he had left behind. Companies wiped out, families broken, people like Richard Carter, who had fallen without ever having a chance to rise again. But he didn't allow himself to feel guilt. That wouldn't help him win. He needed to find a new way to turn the game around. The next morning, Olivia woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. She walked downstairs and found Nathan sitting in the kitchen, his eyes locked onto her. "Good morning," he said casually. Olivia narrowed her eyes. "What are you planning?" Nathan smirked. "I'm thinking maybe you're right." Olivia frowned. That was unexpected. Nathan Caldwell never backed down. Never. He stood up slowly, walking toward her. "Let's say I actually want to change things." Olivia crossed her arms. "And why would I believe that?" Nathan stepped even closer, his presence overwhelming. "Because you're the only person who's ever stood up to me without fear." Olivia felt her heartbeat quicken. Was he playing her? Or was there something real in that look? Nathan smirked. "But tell me, Olivia, do you want me to change because you want justice? Or because deep down, you're not so sure if you hate me as much as you'd like to?" A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. He was getting inside her head, and the game was far from over. Olivia Carter couldn't afford to hesitate. Nathan was trying to turn the game around. He knew she had him cornered, knew she could destroy him if she wanted to, and yet he didn't seem afraid. He was studying her moves, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Olivia wasn't naive. She had spent years planning every detail of this revenge. She wouldn't be manipulated by him. And yet, something was different. Nathan wasn't reacting with anger. He wasn't trying to intimidate her or forcefully regain control. He was trying something far more dangerous. He was trying to convince her that he could change. Olivia watched as Nathan took a slow sip of his coffee, his gaze fixed on her. "So?" he asked casually. "What happens now, Olivia?" She crossed her arms. "Now you do what I asked." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "And what if I actually want to fix this?" Olivia let out a short laugh. "You're not capable of that," he sighed, feigning disappointment. "That hurts. Are you saying I'm incapable of change?" She rolled her eyes. He was playing, trying to mess with her, flip the roles, but she wouldn't fall for it. "I want proof," Olivia said firmly. "Something real to show that—" "You're serious?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly do you want?" She didn't hesitate. "I want you to give my father's company back." The silence between them was heavy. For the first time, Nathan seemed genuinely caught off guard. He hadn't expected Olivia to push that far. Carter Enterprises had been absorbed into Caldwell Industries years ago, dismantled piece by piece. It no longer existed. "It's not that simple," Nathan replied carefully. Olivia tilted her head. "Yes, it is. You have money, influence, and enough contacts to rebuild it. If you really want to prove you're not a monster, this is how you do it." Nathan took a deep breath. She was testing him. He could refuse. He could expose her and put an end to this once and for all. But instead, he smiled. Because Olivia had just made a mistake. She wanted something from him, which meant he still had control over the game. Nathan stepped closer. "All right, I'll do it." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "What?" He chuckled, amused. I'll rebuild Carter Enterprises from the ground up, but I want something in return. A sinking feeling twisted in Olivia's stomach. Of course, there would be a price. Nathan leaned in, his eyes locked onto hers. You stay with me for another 6 months. Olivia felt her breath hitch. He wanted time. Time to turn the game around. Time to break through her walls. Time to make her doubt everything. The question was she willing to take that risk? Olivia felt the impact of Nathan's words like a precise blow. 6 months. He wanted more time. But for what? To manipulate her? To dismantle her plan? To make her question everything she believed in? She crossed her arms, forcing herself to stay calm. Do you really think you can keep me here for another 6 months? Nathan smirked, taking a slow sip of his coffee. I think you need to decide what's more important, your revenge or the chance to restore what your father built. Olivia hated how easily he flipped the game. The plan had been to force him to surrender, but now he was making her agree to his conditions. She studied him for a moment. Was he bluffing? Maybe he was just playing with her pride. But there was something in the way he challenged her that made her hesitate. You want a new deal? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Nathan nodded. Exactly. She took a deep breath. And if I say no? Nathan leaned in slightly, that subtle smirk never leaving his face. Then I do nothing, and you lose your only chance to see Carter Enterprises rise again. Every muscle in Olivia's body tensed. He had taken control of the game now. She could expose him. She could take him down. But something inside her told her that would be a premature move. If he was truly willing to rebuild her father's company, she couldn't afford to throw that opportunity away. She exhaled slowly. 6 months. And then you hand over the company. Completely. Nathan nodded. Deal. Without hesitation. Olivia pulled out her phone and deleted the recording right in front of him. Nathan raised an eyebrow, surprised. Is that trust or stupidity? Olivia slipped the phone back into her pocket. That's pragmatism. Now you have no excuse not to hold up your end. Nathan chuckled. Let's see if you don't regret this, because now the game had changed, and he was determined to make sure that by the end of these 6 months, Olivia Carter wouldn't want to leave at all. Olivia felt the impact of Nathan's words like a precise blow. 6 months. He wanted more time. But for what? To manipulate her? To dismantle her plan? To make her question everything she believed in? She crossed her arms, forcing herself to stay calm. Do you really think you can keep me here for another 6 months? Nathan smirked, taking a slow sip of his coffee. I think you need to decide what's more important, your revenge or the chance to restore what your father built. Olivia hated how easily he flipped the game. The plan had been to force him to surrender, but now he was making her agree to his conditions. She studied him for a moment. Was he bluffing? Maybe he was just playing with her pride. But there was something in the way he challenged her that made her hesitate. You want a new deal? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Nathan nodded. Exactly. She took a deep breath. And if I say no? Nathan leaned in slightly, that subtle smirk never leaving his face. Then I do nothing, and you lose your only chance to see Carter Enterprises rise again. Every muscle in Olivia's body tensed. He had taken control of the game now. She could expose him. She could take him down. But something inside her told her that would be a premature move. If he was truly willing to rebuild her father's company, she couldn't afford to throw that opportunity away. She exhaled slowly. 6 months. And then you hand over the company. Completely. Nathan nodded. Deal. Without hesitation. Olivia pulled out her phone and deleted the recording right in front of him. Nathan raised an eyebrow, surprised. Is that trust or stupidity? Olivia slipped the phone back into her pocket. That's pragmatism. Now you have no excuse not to hold up your end. Nathan chuckled. Let's see if you don't regret this, because now the game had changed, and he was determined to make sure that by the end of these 6 months, Olivia Carter wouldn't want to leave at all. A chill ran down Olivia's spine as she locked eyes with Nathan. She had just made a deal with the devil himself, 6 months by months. His side, while he rebuilt Carter Enterprises. It sounded like a fair trade, but she knew Nathan never did anything without a hidden motive. He had a plan. That night, Olivia barely slept. She lay in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, her mind spinning with possibilities. Had she made a mistake? Would Nathan actually keep his word? By morning, she found Nathan already awake, dressed for work, as if nothing had changed. "Good morning," he said casually, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Olivia crossed her arms. "Have you started holding up your end of the deal?" Nathan smirked. "Patience is a virtue, Olivia." She frowned. He was enjoying this, but she wouldn't back down. Over the next few days, Nathan took the first steps toward rebuilding Carter Enterprises. Olivia monitored every move, reviewing contracts, double-checking details, but something felt different. Nathan no longer seemed like the ruthless, cutthroat mogul she had come to know. He was changing, or maybe this was just another tactic to throw her off. By the 3rd week, Nathan took her to visit an old Carter Enterprises building, now abandoned. He stopped in front of the structure and glanced at her. "This is what you want me to bring back?" Olivia nodded. "That's what we agreed." Nathan exhaled. "And after that, what happens when everything is ready?" She hadn't expected that question. He was testing her, trying to see if she was still certain about leaving. She kept her expression firm. "After that, I move on. With my life." Nathan chuckled softly. "Will you, though?" A tightness formed in Olivia's chest. He was playing with her. But the truth was, she was starting to question it herself. And that was dangerous. Very dangerous. Because if Nathan Caldwell was good at anything, it was twisting the rules of the game in his favor. And Olivia could feel herself starting to lose control. Olivia felt the weight of the game pressing down on her shoulders. For years, she believed she knew exactly what she was doing, that she had everything under control. But now, with every move Nathan made, her certainty was starting to waver. He was rebuilding Carter Enterprises step by step, exactly as he had promised. But that wasn't what unsettled her. What made her restless was how he was doing it. Nathan wasn't acting like the cold, ruthless mogul she had expected. He was genuinely involved in the project, analyzing every detail, making sure every decision was handled carefully. This didn't feel like an act to convince her, but Olivia refused to believe he was changing. He was Nathan Caldwell. He always had a hidden agenda. One night, Olivia found him in the living room going over documents. He looked different, less arrogant, more human. She crossed her arms and watched. "Him. Since when do you care this much?" Nathan lifted his eyes to her, holding a contract in his hands. "Since I realized that maybe I was wrong about a lot of things." A strange tightness formed in her chest. Was he being serious? Nathan set the papers down and leaned back on the couch, studying. "Oh, you expected me to be just a monster, didn't you?" Olivia looked away. "I expected you to be exactly who you've always been." Nathan smirked. "And what if I'm not anymore?" She didn't answer, because for the first time she didn't know what to say. Over the next few days, Olivia started noticing something that unsettled her even more. Nathan was changing, yes. But what about her? Did she still want to leave? Did she still want to see him fall? Or deep down, was part of her starting to want something different? On the 5th night of the 3rd week, Olivia found Nathan on the balcony staring at the city lights. Without knowing why, she stepped closer. He didn't look at her, just spoke in a quiet voice. "If everything could go back, do you think I'd do things differently?" Her heart pounded, because the truth was, she didn't know the answer. And maybe, just maybe, Nathan Caldwell really was changing. But the real question was, could Olivia Carter ever accept that? Olivia felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. For years, she had lived with only one purpose, bringing down Nathan Caldwell. But now, with just a few weeks left in their deal, something inside her was shifting. She had spent the past days watching Nathan, not the ruthless mogul who destroyed her family, but the man who, in some way, was trying to fix what he had done. But Olivia refused to believe it was real. It had to be another game. One night, Nathan found her in the library, lost in thought. "You've been quiet lately." She crossed her arms. "I'm just trying to figure out what you're doing." Nathan smiled, taking a seat across from her. "And what have you concluded?" Olivia hesitated. She wasn't sure anymore. He tilted his head, studying her. "Tell me the truth, Olivia. Do you still want to destroy me?" She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out, because deep down she wasn't sure anymore. Nathan saw the hesitation and leaned in. "What if I told you I want something different?" Olivia's heartbeat quickened. "What do you want, Nathan?" He didn't look away. "You." The silence was crushing. Olivia's stomach twisted. Was he lying, or was he truly willing to change? She wanted to believe him, but what if he was just waiting for the perfect moment to strike? She stood up, her pulse racing. "This doesn't make sense. You're not like this." Nathan stood as well, his expression serious. "And what if I am? What if all of this, everything I've built, isn't enough for me anymore?" She shook her head, confused. This couldn't be real. Nathan watched her, waiting for an answer. But Olivia didn't know what to say, because now the choice was in her hands. And for the first time, she was more afraid than he was. Olivia felt the weight of every choice she had made in the past few months. She had entered this game to win, to destroy Nathan Caldwell. But now, standing in front of him, she wasn't sure she wanted that anymore. Nathan watched her, waiting. He had already made his move. He had admitted he wanted something different, that he wanted her. But Olivia didn't know if she could trust him. The silence between them was crushing. "You're not going to say anything?" Nathan finally asked, his voice low, filled with expectation. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, trying to organize her thoughts. When she opened them, she knew she was about to make the hardest decision of her life. She took a deep breath. "And if I stay?" Nathan didn't react immediately, but then a subtle smile curved his lips. "Then maybe for the first time, I don't need to win." Olivia felt her stomach twist. This was it. The game was over. She had spent years planning her revenge, but now what remained wasn't hatred. She stepped closer to Nathan, her heart pounding. "If you lie to me, if you betray me, I swear I'll destroy you." Nathan held her gaze, and this time there was no coldness, only truth. He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I've already lost to you, Olivia, but this time it's the best loss of my life." Olivia let out a small smile, something she never imagined doing in front of him. But here, they were no longer enemies. They were just two people who had met in the middle of a war and decided that maybe love was an even greater victory. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, and for the first time, Olivia allowed herself to let go. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but this time she wasn't alone. And for the first time, Nathan Caldwell and Olivia Carter weren't playing against each other. They were playing together,